you are. Okay. So interesting thing is so far we've talked about what are we called? How do we span silos? And say you come onto your new company as a design team and have no idea where to start. How do you build a design team from scratch? I do believe Colin, who is a global design strategist at IBM, is going to tell us. Over to you, Colin.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Let me start sharing my screen. Usually it's important to do that. All right. Let me know if you can see it. I'm assuming yes.
Yep, we're good.
Perfect. All right. Well, welcome everyone to Cheat, Borrow, Steal, how to build and scale a successful design practice. So as was mentioned, I'm Colin Budd. I'm with a really fun team at IBM called The Garage. To give you some context of why I'm on this virtual stage talking to you today, essentially, I have the really good fun and pleasure of working with clients around the world, really getting started getting unstuck on innovative projects, first of their kind type pieces, or just your usual modernization, blockchain, even quantum type work. But one of my favorite things I get to do with clients are design transformations. Really bringing things that we use in the field, like startup type methodologies, design thinking, lean, agile, and all the while scaling it so it works for any enterprise of any size, a 6-person team or a giant 400,000 person strong entity like IBM. And so we've helped so many things. I think my favorite thing is I came into IBM 2016 or so, just as we were in the process of our own design transformation, almost an experiment to see, hey, look, if we think about things and approach problems from a human-centered way, will that actually have a better outcome than just throwing technology at it? Of course, spoiler alert, absolutely yes. And so I get to see that in motion as it's kind of getting on and off its feet. And I've been able to actually be on the ground helping clients like American Airlines, Duke Energy, and so many others do exactly the same thing. Now, what I've learned across the board is that everyone has similar issues, more or less. So maybe you're excited to be here today virtually with us because you want to get started. Maybe you're a grassroots type person. You're one out of 100 or out of 5 who really wants to bring that human-centered thinking, the design practice methodology to your team, to your organization. But how do you get started? Or maybe still, you've got a great design team in place. They do UX, UI, visual, but mostly delivery. You're not part of the decision-making process yet. The user really isn't ingrained in what we should do and why we should do it. So how do you fix that? How do you change that? Or my favorite, maybe you're nearly there. You've got all the right people, practices, processes all in place, but just not scaling the way you want it to. It hasn't really affected every team. So what can you do? Now, of course, the good news is that there is hope. To build a design practice that really is successful, self-scaling, self-sustaining, and absolutely its core culture changing, you just have to, okay, so there's a lot I want to talk about today. I only have something like 15 minutes or 18 minutes. So while we can't get into everything that I really would love to touch on, let's keep it simple. Let's just say we need to cheat, borrow, and steal. Let me teach you how to cheat. When I say cheat, I mean taking what works and adapting it. Now, we are all creative people. That's why we're here today. And the thing is, we have this sort of impetus to be original, to be organic, to be innovative. And so it's almost blasphemous to say taking what's there and making it work. But the truth is, you do not need to start at square one. Whether you're trying to fix some walls you're hitting or just get started, don't start at square one. Out in the market, you can look at IBM, IDEO, Google Ventures, Stanford's D-School. There are so many great entities that have done the hard work of thinking through over the last decade and beyond. What is a design practice? What are the tenets of that? And what are some of the key foundational elements that you need? And more importantly, they're not just trying to sell it to you. They've put it out in the open. So you can go out right now, find one that maps well to where you are and where you want to be, and see what are their methodologies, what are their frameworks, their toolkits, facilitation assets, and on and on. So take those things. Don't recreate the circle. Go find them. They're out there for the taking. But you do have to be a little bit original. You have to adapt them, make them your own. And I mean this in 2 really critical ways. First and foremost, it's language. Something we all, across 11 time zones, we all deal with on a daily basis, language. So think about your organization. Maybe you're a 2-person team, maybe you're a 200,000 person team. What does MVP versus POC mean to you? What does design thinking mean? Does it have a good connotation? What if it's a user versus a sprint, and onwards and onwards? Working against yourself early on is one of the biggest things I see all the time. People try to go in and try to make design thinking a thing, but maybe it was tried 4 years ago and design thinking fell flat for some reason or another. I can't even tell you how many times I've gone in to lead a workshop with a client, and moments before I get going, someone well-intentionally tells me, hey, look, by the way, they've done design thinking before, didn't work for them, just don't mention it, have fun. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness. So I'll create a mental swear jar, I'll change some slides, and all of a sudden I will now go and call it something like human-centered thinking. And I kid you not, without fail, 2 weeks later, I'll be on a client call and the client will tell me, oh my goodness, we did not like design thinking, but that human-centered thinking, that's magic stuff. I'm being silly, but the reality is don't work against yourself by trying to fit a certain language that already exists. Uneducating people is a really difficult task. So find new language, work around it. If it's called a sprint already and it's not working, call it a 4-week cycle or a cadence, whatever you want to do. And the second key thing when it comes to cheating is you have to fit your structure. Quite literally how you're organized matters. So when IBM was trying to get going, kind of an experiment for 5 years, we're looking at how do we actually transform 400,000 people into being human-centered. We didn't try to do that by going to each person. We actually formed a core team back in 2013, a core team of design practitioners who were brought in from different parts of IBM, who we hired in, and we trained and built out our design practice. And I brought in teams from across IBM to train them by doing workshops or training by doing. And eventually we had enough people, enough interest, we were able to actually put talent onto teams, really staffing these resources. And more importantly, as time progressed, today we're at a place where now everyone is a design practitioner, truly. Designers, developers, business mindsets, sellers, you name it. We all speak the language of being human-centered. And most importantly, we have enablement in the sense of courses and badges and things like that. So now you're constantly being enabled, but in new ways. Now, we couldn't have started where we are today. There's just no way. So thinking about how your organization is currently structured, where you are, where you want to be, and mapping to that really matters. You have to get that right from the get-go. But this is all conjecture. You have to put into practice, which means you have to start borrowing things. And I mean it in 3 key ways: time, trust, and teams. Now, when you're trying to get going, you kind of feel like a lot is working against you because you feel like you're asking for a lot. Time, trust, teams, that's a lot to ask for. But I always like to refer to this kind of give to get model, right? You have a lot to give. Even though you're asking for what feels like so much, you can give teams the ability to work faster, identify and prioritize work better than ever before, really gain clarity, alignment strategy. And sure, if you're a designer, you can probably help with some of the design elements. Now, that said, you are asking for a bit in return. Maybe it's a workshop, so 2 days worth of time. Their trust in the process and methodology. There are people to be part of it, things like that. So be sure to leverage what you have because you have a lot to give, even if you're a one-person champion. You have so much to give. And most importantly, I think there's always this sort of perception that you have to have everything perfect before you get going. That is not the case. You can start small and start anywhere. And I want to put that into context because I think no one believes me on this point, but it's really crucial. When we went to American Airlines, we already found them to be human-centered leaders. They care deeply about the customer day in, day out. And when I say day out, they lose sleep over doing the right thing for the right people at their core. So we came in to help with a lot of digital pieces, transformation, and design. But they had a great design team. They had a great design practice. The thing that we found is that it wasn't scaling the way they wanted to. And more curiously, we found repeat customers, which is a good sign. The same teams kept coming back for more design talent, more design thinking, more human-centered research, things like that. But it wasn't breaking past those initial teams. So we started small and started anywhere. If we couldn't get a team to be attracted to do a 2-day workshop, we'd have a 1-hour meeting and we bring the sticky notes, we bring the Sharpies, and we be human-centered. We do some design thinking during it. And we kept doing these strategic moments across new teams that we've never touched before, across different sides of the business. And all of a sudden, and it's kind of coy, but all of a sudden we had this tidal wave where you had that water cooler effect. Everyone is talking about it. And that was the breaking point because from that moment on, everyone wanted to do design thinking, everyone wanted to be user-centered, and their design practice team all of a sudden had a clear channel to move forward. So we need to start small. You don't have to have a giant workshop. You can literally start with a 2-day moment, or 2-hour moment, a 2-minute moment, but just kind of get your hook sniffed a little bit, build that trust and keep going. And that build to trust part is really key because as you're doing this, you have to build your equity. So that brings us to stealing things. We're going to steal a couple things: hearts, minds, and bodies. Now, if that is way too designery for you on a Monday, I get it, I hear you. Let's put it differently. We're going to steal our seat at the table. Now, this is crucial because as you're going along, whether you're getting started or whether you're getting stuck, You've cheated a little bit. You've taken things that work really well out in the open. You've brought it into your own. You fit the language. You fit the structure. You're borrowing time. You're giving to get, all these great pieces. But it means nothing if you're not actually trying to grow this and scale this. And to do just that, you have to leverage success to scale buy-in. This is a universal truth. I don't think I'm trying to convince us of this. But think about it. Success matters. When you think about why in the business world you are successful, it's because you're trusted. And why you're trusted, it's because you're successful. And think about those around you. Who do you trust? It's because they've done the right thing again and again. You can trust them to do the right thing in the future because they have a pattern of success. So when it comes to actually substantiating design practice and really allowing it to be self-sustaining and scaling, you absolutely need, well, not only be successful, but you need to evangelize. And that is a key point that I think people often think, yes, I need to do it, but they put it off to the side because they're more concerned by doing. So when I say evangelize, I mean outcomes, big and small. If you're holding, giant engagements that are 8-week-long sprints, evangelize the outcomes of that. If you're holding small workshops, evangelize the outcomes of it. Whatever it is, make sure you're constantly sharing. And you can do it in a really simple way by documenting, measuring, and spreading it, sharing it. So when I say documenting, I mean things like, let's say you have a design thinking workshop. What are the inputs? What's the problem we're trying to solve? Who attended? What are the steps and actions we took to try to think through the right things to do? And what are the outcomes we arrived at? And because you're trying to get buy-in from high-level stakeholders, you also need to start doing things like measuring. Because after all, business people speak the language of business, which are metrics and KPIs, and there's really no way around it. So measure, get a baseline. What's the world today? And think about how you've been able to influence the success of a project by being user-centric. How you've been able to bring down, for instance, 5 weeks of meetings into a 2-day alignment session through design thinking. All these kind of key pieces. Because when you have those metrics and you're documenting the right things and you're putting it in a way that's consumable, whether it's a PDF document, whether it's by having presentations and playbacks, as we call them, that bring in new people to understand what just happened and where we're going, you begin to really get this tidal wave effect. People start to listen and they can understand it by taking what works for them, whether it's a metric or whether it's actually sort of the activities, and starting to piece it together in mind of why this is a crucial way forward. And to really kind of build that platform, you have to also leverage the people that you have and those that you need. When you go through this, you'll see this for anything, whether you're trying to build a design practice or whatever you're trying to do in terms of culture change. You're going to find this moment of middle out, bottom up, and top down. And it's almost in order of easiest to hardest. Middle out is about you. You're the champion of design thinking, about users, about practices. So it's your role to actually kind of emanate that. Keep doing the right thing, keep championing for the right reasons. And as you keep doing this, building success, you'll find yourself actually hitting a point where you're getting to this bottom up swell. People who see it, who love it, who are actually on the ground doing the work, they get it. And they actually will raise the question, hey, look, I like this, but have we thought about the user's needs? Love that moment. That is the bottom up. But we all know so well, nothing will stay around too long if it doesn't have leadership buy-in. And that's the top down piece. Now, fortunately, that's actually an easier job than not. Oddly enough, you're going to find what we call magic people. Now, I wish I could take any credit for this term. I love this term, but this is before my time at IBM. When they are just getting their design practice going, out of the woodwork, they found these high-level VPs, executives, directors, really top dogs, right? Who came and realized, hey, look, I've been saying for years, we should care more about the user. This is great. I love this. And they become champions for it, almost with no incentive besides just doing the right thing. And they're magic people because since they're so high up, you better believe they have a huge platform. When they say something, people take notice, people listen. And so their verticals listen, their high-level colleagues listen. And so when I say find, I mean look for them because they are definitely out there. You got to find them. We also need to nurture them. Give them whatever kind of documentation, metrics, whatever they're looking for to make that conversation easier so they can champion for you and design practices. Give it to them. Let them have it because they will be your biggest advertisement for doing it the way that you want it to be done. Now, when you have all these pieces in place, of course, easier said than done, you need to be ready for the magic to really spread fast because this is that tipping point. This is that culture change piece. And it's illustrative, but I always like to kind of like think through some of these things. And the best way I can really think through what culture change is as follows. Culture change is nothing more than trust plus enablement multiplied by people over time. Let me break this down. And this is like that screenshot moment I totally know. As you're going through the process, running design thinking workshops, being user-centered in your research and approaches to decision-making and problem solving, You'll be doing this in sort of a two-part fashion where you're building trust through success and enabling people as you go, teaching by doing type moments. And you're doing it across a multitude of people, across teams, across time zones, and certainly across team members, people. But the most important thing here on this page is that you have to give it time. IBM is a giant tech-forward company, right? We're known for IT. That said, though, we gave it a 5-year commitment. Look, we're going to try for 5 years to see if actual design practices, human-centered behaviors, human-centered thinking, all these pieces, if this will be better problem solving than what we're trying to accomplish today. And you better believe we found out only in 2 years that, yes, this is the right path forward. And so the whole point, though, is because we're 400,000 people strong, we had to give it 5 years. We had to give it a runway. So scale your runway accordingly to your own size and your perceived challenges. But don't expect success overnight or in 2 days or 2 years. It does take time. So you kind of got to be a relentless champion for longer than maybe is comfortable. But when you can achieve all this, which I promise you can, that's culture change. And more importantly, that is the foundation to building a design practice that really is successful, self-scaling, self-sustaining, and yes, at its core, culture changing. So to kind of bring this all together for us, I know it's a lot. Don't start from scratch where you don't have to. Really, you don't have to be entirely original just this once. Take and adapt best practices. Look what's out in the open, see where you are, where you want to be, and try to find things that really speak to that same language. And speaking of language, fit your language. Don't work against yourself trying to unteach and reteach. Find new ways of saying the same thing, but the way you want it to be interpreted with the right connotations. And more importantly, fit the structure. Understand how you're structured today and how you could be tomorrow, and work within that realm. And do it anywhere. Don't just start with your own team. Start wherever you can find a need, find the hook. And do it everywhere, because you'll spread that kind of understanding pretty quickly when you're able to have that water cooler effect where everyone's talking about it, everyone wants to do it, and for the right reasons. And as you go along, remember to evangelize by documenting, measuring, sharing, finding and nurturing your magic people, because you're going to have that middle out, bottom up, and top down effect that's going to be a huge influence to really make this actually self-scaling and self-sustaining, because that's culture change. And if all this is too many bullet points to remember, I'll keep it simple. You just have to cheat, borrow, steal. I hope this has been so much fun and hopefully a little educational at the same time. This has been Cheat, Borrow, Steal, how to build and scale a successful design practice. Again, I'm Colin Budd. I have the good fun of doing this day in, day out. So if you want to nerd out with me, seriously, reach out. I always joke, I'm too stalkable online. You can search my name, you can search my alias, which is xbud. No idea why, I just designed it when I was 10 and it's stuck with me. And if you want to learn more about my team, which does a lot of these sort of first of their kind innovative pieces, design transformations, and a lot more, check us out. Talk to me or go to ibm.com/garage. It's been a huge pleasure. Thanks for attending. Wish we're all together, but this is pretty good.
Wow, Colin, you got tons of clapping and great presentation going on in the chat window. And I would love, love, love to nerd out with you sometime.
Please do.
So you're going to be around this afternoon during our morning recap and chat, and you're in Engages so people can reach out and chat to you directly, correct?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Happy to have you.